This is the show where we talk about intelligence, the history of spies, and also interview interesting people. And today I'm talking to my friend Ryan. What is your last name? So I don't get it wrong, because we always think of you Ryan S.
Yes, Smiley. So
Okay,
that's how
great.
we pronounce it. It derives originally, I think, from Ireland via Scotland. So my dad immigrated actually in the 1960s with my dad's side of
Oh,
the family. So I'm
are
first
you at all
generation on this.
familiar with the film series starring Michael Caine as an agent, a spy named Smiley?
A little bit. I've got to reacquaint myself. I have
Okay,
heard of it, but I don't think I've actually seen it yet.
okay. Yeah, for me, the Ipcress File, which is the first movie in that series, is one of the best spy movies ever made. It's very realistic in the sense that it's not James Bond. He's like the anti James Bond. He does get the girl occasionally, but his bosses always screw him in the end, kind of situation. So, so, anyways, Ryan, you mentioned your family. Where did the rest of your family come from? Your mother.
So yeah, my mom's side, they well, I it'll be a long conversation there. So my grandfather's side of the family is from Harvey, Illinois, which is a suburb slash rural town just outside of Chicago, south of
Okay.
Chicago. My grandmother's side of the family originally came out of Baltimore. Um, and so my great grandmother went to Bucknell University in the 19 teens, and my great grandfather and her met while at Bucknell, and then eventually made their way to the Chicagoland area, and that's how my grandparents on my mom's side met.
Okay, cool. Uh, you've grown up. I know you mostly from the fact that you live in California.
Yep.
Is that where your family eventually immigrated, or was that something like? How did you all end up in California?
That's a great question. So my grandmother and my grandfather, unfortunately, they divorced at some point while my mom was a child. She ended up coming out to California, and part of that was that my great grandparents were living in the San Jose area. My dad and his side of the family, they immigrated because of family, friends, and acquaintances that moved themselves out of Scotland and towards the Bay Area. And so my grandfather moved. He was a machinist, and they had an opportunity at a company called United Pumps, and he was able to get a visa that way. He moved about, I think, about 8 months to a year before the rest of the family came over from Glasgow area, and then eventually the whole family came, and then eventually my mom and my dad serendipitously met.
Mhm. Yeah, so you're very big into water polo. So how did you get into that?
That's a great question. I would say happenstance. I was very into football. So I read books about football, John Madden, Bill Walsh, things of that nature when I was a kid. My great grandfather actually played the game. He played for the Pittsburgh Steelers and Philadelphia Eagles in the 1930s. And the one difference between my great grandfather and myself was that he was an offensive lineman, enjoyed the physical aspects of the game.
Mhm.
I always wanted to play quarterback, and I played some tackle football, realized that hitting was not my thing.
Yeah.
And so my parents, my freshman year of high school, gave me a choice: get a job or find a sport. So it was either cross country or water polo for me outside of football, and so I chose
Okay.
water polo, and yeah, it was a great decision. I mean, I ended up playing in college and met my wife through the sport. So
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
yeah.
No. No. What do you like about water polo? What made it such an appealing option?
I mean, one of the biggest challenges with the sport, obviously, is the fitness level that you have to be able to maintain and compete. While it it's not necessarily a full contact sport. There's a lot of physicality in it. I was also a big fan of basketball. I love playing basketball, and there are some similarities between basketball and water polo. And it combines a lot of different sports. I mean, you've got a goalie, so it's a cross between hockey and soccer. You're throwing the ball, so it's kind of similar to baseball. And then you got the being in the pool aspect of it and having to tread water, which makes it quite challenging while you're wrestling in the pool.
Yeah, hockey and soccer. That was not a combination I was expecting to hear. I also have a relative who was in the Maple Leafs of all things, Turk Broda, who was my father's uncle. So he was a famous goalie for the Maple Leafs. So I have that kind of sports connection. But I played a little basketball as a kid, but my parents got divorced and I got bounced around from school. So I just didn't do that. And then in high school, I took up Taekwondo and was pretty good at that for a little bit, but when I left for college, I didn't really end up pursuing it further. But my teacher at the time said, "Yeah, I would maybe a black belt. That wouldn't be no problem."
Right on. I didn't know you were into Taekwondo. That's good to know.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And when I looked up, I don't know if you've ever heard the term bullshit martial arts.
No.
Okay, so there are certain martial arts that are considered BS because of the MMA community. Everyone starts taking up different martial arts styles to fight in MMA. And they realized early on that, what is it? Not Tai Chi. Kung Fu is what they call a BS martial art because when you go and try and use Kung Fu in an actual fight, you lose.
Yeah.
And Taekwondo is very considered, especially because of the heavy emphasis on kicking, it's not considered one of those things. But we've heard about the social credit system they supposedly have in China. There's this one MMA guy who went around challenging all the Kung Fu masters to fights and was kicking their butts. And his social credit score went down so far, he wasn't allowed to go to his own gym.
Oh, my goodness. That's the story.
Yeah, because he was culturally undermining China by proving that Kung Fu wasn't a real thing.
Yeah, that makes that social credit scoring a bit of a challenge, I would say.
Yeah, no. I mean, we have our own little social credit, of course. Whenever we have to go for a bank loan, we have to have a credit. So, but when you start applying it to cultural issues as opposed to just your finances, it can get a little ridiculous.
Yeah, indeed.
So, yeah, what was it like growing up in California back when you did? Were you old enough to avoid having the cell phones, or were cell phones a big thing when you were growing up?
That's a great question. I grew up. I was born in 1984, same year as LeBron James. I share a birthday with the late great Kobe Bryant, so he was an August 23rd baby as I was. But I was like right on the cusp. So when I got into like my early teen years, I had a pager. For many folks out there might not know what a pager was back in the day.
If you don't, watch the first season of The Wire and you'll learn what pagers are.
Yeah, you had to learn. I think it was like T9 language to be able to write words into your pager code. So that was my first entree into being available in a mobile sense. I think I was probably in college when I really got my first smartphone. So I was able to avoid some of the trappings of the modern era, I would say, in that respect.
Yeah. So, but anyways, growing up in California and going to school there, what was it kind of like?
So one thing with my mom specifically, she was adamant that she did not want to put my sister and I through the public school system in California. She didn't have a great time, even though she lived in a pretty good area here in Northern California. And so I went to an Episcopalian school for K through 8, and then I went to a Jesuit all boys high school for my high schooling. In fact, I think I mentioned this. Matt Mahan is a fellow alumnus of my former high school, Bellarmine.
And for those who don't know who that is,
and for those who do not know that is, he is the current mayor of San Jose, as well as a candidate for governor currently.
Yeah, pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah.
No, I mean, my mother's best friend has something called the Order of Canada, which is like equivalent to a British knighthood that she got for her work in human rights stuff. So I get it when you have these famous people you sort of know, and you're like, holy crap, I can't believe I have this connection here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, it was. So I going back to your question about childhood and growing up, I mean, I was very lucky in the fact that, you know, my mom really prioritized education, wanted to put us in the best schools, and I had the opportunity to join a prestigious place like Bellarmine. In fact, it's actually, as far as a school itself, it's older than Santa Clara University, which is right next door, which is a private Catholic high school, or sorry, Catholic college, as well as graduate school.
Now, are you particularly religious, having gone to both a Catholic and Episcopalian school, or you just kind of take it as it comes?
I guess I would say take it as it comes. I would consider myself agnostic. I believe in a higher power. I just don't know that every religion has it correct, I guess is how I would put it.
Yeah, I agree with that. When I was in my teenage years, I read part of some James Michener novel about the history of Iran or / Persia, and in it it starts off with a guy who's a Zoroastrian priest, and the Zoroastrians have a very interesting version of how they look at religion, in the sense that, why does God need all these different religions out there? Why don't we just go out and convert them all to one thing? And because God wants to be worshipped in as many ways possible. So for me, worshiping God is to go, I'm an Anglican / Episcopalian, because I just think that's the best way for me to do it. But I certainly don't believe my roommate / business partner, she's Muslim. I don't think she's going to hell just because she doesn't follow the one true God. I think that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I guess the way I would say is, like, I think spirituality is important, but a particular religion, I don't think is a make or break. Just as long as you have some sort of bigger understanding of the world, and as well as the universe, and you recognize and appreciate what you have, I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. So moving on, do you have any particular specific big memories from being in high school? Any like big projects, something like that, or like favorite football match or something like that?
I guess, like, along the lines of spirituality, what I really appreciated about my high school experience was, I'll name check. There was a teacher that I had. His name was Mr. Sasso at Bellarmine, and he was known. He was a religious scholar and teacher of introductory to Catholicism and religion. And what I really appreciated about that course was it was much broader than just strictly Catholicism. We talked about Buddhism, we talked about Islam, many of the other religions, Taoism, and it wasn't a strictly I'm blanking on the term at the moment, but a literal reading of the Bible. It was how can we interpret some of the things that were said in the Bible versus, you know, what may have actually been occurring at that time. And one of the examples that really comes to mind was when Moses parted the Red Sea, when he left Egypt with the Jews and helped them escape. We looked at the geology of the time, and you know perhaps God did in fact help him to part the Red Seas, but let's look at this. If that actually didn't happen, how how did they escape the Egyptians without getting captured once again and put back into slavery? And there was marshland in that area of Egypt.
The Reed Sea.
Yep. And so, that was something that I really appreciate, being exposed to that level of inspection and taking a closer look at historical events that were tied to the Bible.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with one of my teachers. I had to look on his name up a few weeks ago, and now all my stuff is in storage. But he was he had traveled the world. He had been to India in the 70s and seen some stuff, and he really implanted some conspiracy ideas into our heads as kids in high school. And he was our economics / world studies professor. And so learning about things like our valedictorian, she did her report for him on the IMF, and that was really eye-opening for how the world really works. And and also he did this thing. He would talk about, every year we'd all convince him to tell us about this thing called Alternative 3. And he always would make it up to be like a real BBC production about like 3 kind of things, but turns into this conspiracy at the end about like a world government and a secret space program and the brain drain. And I finally tracked it down 5 years ago, and I found out it was one of those documentaries. But you'd be like, if you want to watch this thing, you have to write to the BBC, and they will fly you a copy from their country. And I'm like, that seems a bit ridiculous, but but yeah, I did find it, and then eventually, it's one of those mockumentaries. It's every 10 minutes. It runs like, this is a mockumentary. This is not based on actual events. Okay, so speaking of all this, I really appreciate you, Ryan, because you're one of the guys who's on the center left that will come on and go toe-to-toe with us reactionaries on the two-way platform. Then I appreciate the fact that we need more perspective on things. Like,
yeah, and I that's why I appreciate the platform. Is I don't think I would consider myself somebody, to use the term TDS, that really was in that arena. But what the platform has really provided for me is a better understanding of folks on that side who voted for our current president. And I appreciate the platform just from the perspective of giving us that ability to have a back and forth and do it in a civil way, and to use Mark H's term, peace, love, and understanding. And I think for the most part, we do a good job of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then of course I come in because I'm one of the outsiders on the thing, because even though I'm like a right-wing reactionary, I'm just like, sometimes I come with this Canadian perspective, and people are like, I'm very confused. How are you not believing in this stuff? Because, I'm pro-Medicare. I just want a public, I like the idea of a public option. I think Obamacare was the worst of all possible worlds, where they enrich the insurance companies at the expense of the people, instead of just make Medicare optional. And if you're rich, you can buy better healthcare. That's all I want. And that's what we have here in Canada. It's like, if you're rich, you just go to the United States or some other country.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great point. I think, I've been mulling over the whole healthcare debate for quite a long time. I'm sure as a lot of Americans have, especially since Obamacare was put in place. And I agree. I mean, I am pro, not necessarily Medicare for all, but a Medicare option that at least gives somebody a minimum level of coverage. And should they have the means, absolutely get yourself better insurance and go for it. But I mean, we're in a situation right now in our country. I was talking to someone who lives in Southern California, and I mean, it's quite common for folks now just to drive down to Tijuana to get medical care because of the fact that it's so expensive here in the US, and also in some cases unattainable for folks, even here in California, a state that's very far left, very blue. And it's just that is something that I would advocate for, and we're on the same page there, David.
Yeah, definitely. And then we have a similar issue here in Canada, where doctors will advise people who want to get an MRI prioritized, just go to Buffalo and pay $500 and get it done. So it's just like, I'd rather that money be spent here in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's it's obviously debate everywhere around the world, like what level of healthcare is, quote unquote, a human right. I would just, I guess I would couch it as, if it is deemed a commodity healthcare wise these days, then it should be viewed as a right. And having free and ready access to that minimum level of care is something that I think every person in the world deserves. Obviously, depending on the country you live in, there's different means available, but we live in the richest country in the world, speaking of the United States, and to be in a situation that we've been in for the past, God, as long as I can think of, as long as I've been alive, we've still got people. I think we are the country with the most healthcare debt, as well as most bankruptcies due to healthcare debt of any civilized or first world country. That's for sure. And that just to me is inexcusable.
Yeah, I agree. And it all comes out of World War II, because they had price controls or wage controls on people. So the unions decided to negotiate on healthcare. So they got their plated things, but then they created this industry that's been self-replicating and just getting out of control, more and more out of control. And it's one of those unintended consequence situations. We didn't mean for this to happen, but we're now in the situation. And now, how do we get out of it? Canada has a similar situation. When anyone brings up the debate of healthcare, and they're like, "Well, you just want American-style healthcare." And I'm like, "No, the French have the best. Everyone agrees the French have the best healthcare in the world. Why can't we copy and paste the French system?" These people just get so mind focused because they don't like the states, and then they get that angry, and it's just like, look, there are other options. You do know there are more than 2 countries on the planet.
Yeah, well, and a common example that I hear of too is Japan. I mean, if you look at something that more replicates a free market system, Japan, as far as I understand, they require that certain medical care must be published as specific pricing, so that folks don't walk into hospital A and get one price and walk into hospital B and get a completely different and more expanded price. It's that's another aspect that it'll never make sense to me. I come from the construction industry, which is its own convoluted mess with respect to pricing, but I mean, healthcare makes us look like, I don't, gosh, Mr. Rogers. It's like,
okay, well, why don't we switch topics, gears for a moment, and talk about how did you get into the construction industry?
Happenstance, networking. I was an agricultural business major in college, so I was actually going to go into the wine industry. That was my original plan. I had a job set up, and water polo actually was my conduit. So I actually went back to my old high school and helped coach JV water polo for a few years. And as part of that, one of the folks involved with the program had a company that was in the electrical and construction industry, and he basically said, "Hey, while you're coaching, I can give you some time as an intern at my company." And from there, I really took to it, enjoyed it, and so I think I'm on my 16th or 17th year in the industry now, on the specifically electrical and lighting products.
Yeah, definitely. I remember one of our earliest interactions is when you did the trade show episode on the evening show. And showing us around the Vegas thing. And I used to go to Vegas, and I'm not a casino person. I'm doing the show, meet up with some people, but you're just showing us this elaborate situation of the trade show circuit in Vegas. And it's just was very interesting to see all that behind the scenes stuff that you're giving us.
Oh yeah, I mean that particular show was focused on HVAC, air conditioning, and I mean it's incredible to think of what the expo circuit is like from that side of the business. Folks that put together these events and shows and at convention centers like Las Vegas Convention Center. It's quite an industry, and just specifically in our little bucket of electrical and construction, it's huge. It's quite huge. There are countless numbers of shows that you can get yourself involved in, whether it's new construction, retrofit, and then diving into the particular niches within the industry as well.
Mhm. Well, what interested you so much in the HVAC electrical industry that got you so hooked?
I've always been, being someone of the left, I've always been interested in sustainability.
Mhm.
That original company that I jumped into was a company called Wattstopper,
Okay.
and it was founded during the fuel crisis in the late 1970s, early 1980s. The founder of the company and his brother started it out of their garage, similar to what you might hear with Apple or Hewlett Packard here in the Bay Area. And they found a niche, which was occupancy sensors. So
Mhm.
basically, a device that you put in your room, especially for commercial buildings, and it just makes sure that the lights are off when they're supposed to be. You can also tie it to your air conditioning. So if nobody's in the space, you ramp down your HVAC. And I love that concept of creating more efficiency. Yeah, that's what really got me and got me interested in the idea of joining this aspect of the construction industry.
Cool. No, no. People always are like hammering on right wing and conservatives for not like you for wanting to ruin the environment with our construction project ideas. And I'm like, key word in conservative is conserve.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah, we want the parks and all this stuff. So we like hunting and fishing and going out there and camping with our kids. We want that to happen. We want those things to exist. I just remember a few years ago, I was used to own a house, and I was renting out rooms to people. And one of them had her daughter, and I, she was going to visit her father and go to school. And I said, sure, I'll take her. It's like 10 minutes from my job, so it'll be easy to drop her off. And I'm dropping her off, and she says, I'm going to miss trees. And I'm like, what do you mean? Well, all the trees are going to be gone in 20 years. What? What are you being taught in high school, kid?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I mean, while and I think we connect on this as well. Like while I'm very into the idea of sustainability, I also am pro. Let's get as much power, let's get as much energy production as possible to one bring costs down, but I think at my core, I will always be somebody that is pro sustainability because why would you want to use more power than you actually need? So that we can power the data centers, so that we can power the really truly needed aspects of what we do in our day-to-day life, and also keep our cost of production down as much as possible. And unfortunately, we live in an era now with the current war that's going on where we're really seeing the consequences once again of what we saw in the late 1970s and early 80s.
Yeah. Well, as our friend Jen points out, we are in a much better place these days in the sense that we're nowhere near, we haven't seen any like people having to go to the gas station and only being able to buy because of the day of their birth of their year or something crazy like that. But we are seeing certainly more of that happening overseas.
Yeah, that's true, and I just hope it doesn't come to us in North America. I mean, I think Asia is in a tough situation specifically because they rely so much on the Gulf countries. But here in the States, I just hope we're able to come to a deal that is substantial enough to open up the strait, because I do think that is going to be a concern, especially as a Californian, because we have special gas here in California that we import. That's definitely a concern that I have.
Yeah. Well, I can't say I looked into it. So Keystone looks like it will be back on the table. It's coming back online in 2028. We're also seeing the development of the small modular reactors that we're building here in Canada that we're hoping to export. We're building nuclear power plants. Canada, unlike the United States, actually has a very robust nuclear industry. So it seems likely we're, as much as my premier doesn't like Donald Trump, he's like doing exactly what Trump wants him to do by basically looking around and saying, well, where's our natural advantages? Oh, nuclear power? I guess we'll be feeding all the New England states nuclear power for the next 10 years because they can't build nuclear power plants.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, as an outsider, I would just say that I think my take on Mark Carney is that as soon as our president started calling him the governor and that Canada was going to be the 51st state, that to me was the I don't know, the area where he puts his foot down and says, that's enough, Mr. Trump.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's from somebody in the U.S. who would like to see a different sort of administration. I think where Trump has really done a good job of showing what the U.S. could do in some way, sense, or form is really challenging our historic allies to step up their own game, which I will credit him there. His approach I disagree with vehemently. But I mean, you got to give him credit with what he's done with NATO in some sense, and definitely Canada and Mexico in some ways.
Yeah, as our friend Richard would point out, he's stress testing the system and
Indeed.
seeing what's shaking out. But yeah, I agree. Trump is not the best messenger, but that whole Ghostbusters moment, choose the form of your destroyer. Instead of Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, you got Donald Trump, which blows my mind.
Mine too.
I just remember on election night on 2016, and I was watching it happen, and at 2 a.m, I went on my Facebook and I said, "America, what did you do?"
Yeah, I remember I was at dinner in Los Angeles, this great pasta place, and as soon as we started hearing that what the results were going to be, we went with a friend straight to a bar, and were astounded by what was that Hillary Clinton was going to be conceding.
Yeah, no, I definitely I thought it was going to happen intellectually because I was basically doom scrolling polling Real Killer Politics polling average for the 2 weeks leading up to it, and I had a big fight with my dad because he's like, the polls are showing that it's not happening. And I'm like, look, what happened is 2 weeks out, she's at 220 electoral votes solidly in her corner, and Trump's around 120, 130. And then over the next 2 weeks, I watched her steadily drop to 120. And I'm like, oh, crap, it's happening.
Yeah. Well, and isn't that the irony of what's going on with James Comey at this moment as well? Is going back all the way to 2015, 2016. I mean, him reopening that investigation really helped to open up that door for him to become president. And it's an irony that I wouldn't say Democrats are necessarily defending him, but at least defending the aspect that he shouldn't necessarily be going to court right now.
Yeah, Comey is one of these weird sanctimonious figures that come up every so often who think they're too good for school. I mean, he was totally playing that election to his advantage. He thought he was going to be like in the cabinet, Hillary Clinton's cabinet, by doing the moves that he did, and instead he gets Trump elected. Like, these guys you get to a certain amount of power, and it all goes to your head. And I think that really is what happened with Comey.
I don't disagree with you there. Not at all.
So we've been talking about that. We've talked a little about the Iran war. What other topics would you like to discuss?
Oh, good question. I guess going to the Iran war, I think what sparked this interview was just that, from a political perspective, we have the midterms coming up here in the U.S. We're now approaching June, so we're about 5 months out from the election, and just the strategy of, I know that our president has now stated on multiple occasions, especially in the last week, he's not, when we're talking about the Iran war, I am not concerned with the midterms.
Yeah.
At the same time, if he wants to continue to prosecute this war, then he's got to worry about the midterms.
Right.
I think it's really interesting, just his approach and the fact that he continues to push that, because his audience is not the U.S. when he's making these comments. His audience is obviously the Middle East and Iran. Mm-hmm. I just wonder in the next few weeks if in some way his message changes, if in some way it seems like his approach is changing, he's making more concessions to Iran with respect to coming to some sort of agreement. But is it enough to salvage the midterms from a Republican perspective? Because quite frankly, I think even if just the House goes to the Democrats, they're going to tie them up in a lot of different stuff. And specifically with the war in Iran, they're going to make some requirements unless the Supreme Court makes a decision around the Defense Authorization Act. Is that, if I'm saying?
And they've always punted on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess for me, I'm watching a lot of Promethean action, and they cover a lot of stuff, interesting stuff on the midterms. For me, I think the example is what we were just talking about, is that when Comey in the last 2 weeks of the 2016 election, Americans tend to make up their mind in the last 2 weeks of what they're going to do. So we're looking at about 6 months out, trying to predict on the future. And we might be in a completely different situation entirely, in a different mindset at that time than we are. So we're always thinking about applying today's example to the future, where we might not be living in that future. So he could be he could die of a heart attack one day, and Vance could be president the next day and going into the midterms. We just don't know.
Yeah, to that point, I saw something in the last 24 hours that I guess there's speculation that Trump had internally within the administration talked about this meeting at Camp David, which was not going to actually occur. Mm-hmm. And it was J.D. Vance who, the theory is, leaked it, and he's now in a bad space within the administration. In fact, to the point where this is all what I have heard through reporting, that Trump is trying to find a way to get him out of the VP position.
Yeah, I don't really think too much of that, because I look at it a lot differently sometimes. People were always mad that, JD and Tulsi weren't in the room with Trump during much of these discussions. Who is in the room with him? All the people we hate. All the people he's going to burn if Iran goes south. JD and Tulsi were outside the room. Why? Because they were being protected. That's kind of how I think about it. So I hear a lot of these rumors about coming out this, and then I kind of look at the space and I think to myself, no, this is them trying to make us think there's a rift where there isn't. And I think one of the best examples is that when people were talking about that, JD and Tulsi were in the room, and then suddenly Trump appoints him head of the Iran negotiation team and head of the fraud investigation teams. So he's being put in positions where he won't be tied to the war.
I hear you there. I obviously I'm very much an outsider looking in. Mm-hmm. I just wonder if it is JD that has given himself that sort of say and latitude, or if, like, for instance, the Iran negotiations, is he still running that?
My understanding, yes, but whenever they actually sit down for it, I think that's right now. He's going to be there for when they have to sign a deal. It's not real. It's more the two real estate guys that are really Kushner and what's his name are really Witkoff. The guys. Yeah, Witkoff. Those two guys are the ones really doing the day-to-day work, and JD will be there to sign it when the deal is done. because that's
Yeah,
what
I mean,
politicians do.
yeah, I just uh, as far as his ties to specifically the Iran war and really what we've been doing broadly speaking as far as military action, perhaps you are correct that part of it is that the administration may want to protect him because he is viewed as the dovish person within the administration, whereas I think Marco Rubio is looked at more as the hawk.
Right.
And if you think about 2028, these are the two folks that are viewed as the two on the leaderboard that would be the top two from the Republican side. It would be a good contrast if you're thinking from President Trump reality show presidency.
Yes. I was just thinking about that. This is so totally The Apprentice.
Yeah. Yeah, to that point, I don't think he's going to endorse anybody. Do you think he will be?
Not until someone's clearly in the win, kind of like with Ken Paxton.
Yeah.
I think that'll be it. So it's like when one of those two, or maybe some outsider like DeSantis or someone else comes in, I don't necessarily discount that. He's running in The Apprentice, so it might come down to those two. It might come down to someone we're not even talking about. But when that person clearly emerges as the front runner, running ahead with like 60% of the delegates, Trump's going to endorse that guy.
I hear you. He's definitely. I think in some ways he is. He helps determine races, but he also back runs a little bit. He will attach himself. In the Ken Paxton example, he knew he was going to win, and so hey, I want another notch on the board that I'm influencing the decision making of the voting public, and I mean he does a good job of that. I got to say that.
Yes, for a real estate broker dealer from New York, he understands politics very well. But I guess it's a tight, cutthroat business, and especially at the level he plays.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, speaking of future elections, I'm leaning more and more that it is not going to be one of the top 4 or 5 that end up, as far as if was Mark H's 8 for 28. I think that I think it'll end up being somebody that's not on that board currently.
Yeah, I definitely think that for the Democrats, I think Rahm Emanuel is going to have a kingmaker role in the process. He has a lot of connections. I don't necessarily see him as the president or the Democrat nominee, but I think he's going to have an influence on getting whoever gets to be in that position role. And I mean, who really thought Barack Obama was going to win in 2008? I think he was running like he seriously wanted to win, but I think he thought he was going to be VP.
Yeah. I mean, my current dark horse is Ossoff.
Oh, okay.
Someone who comes from a Republican state. They have a large black population. I think he would be a great candidate if he can keep himself in the conversation. And thus far, I think he's done a really good job of being someone on the outside looking in that I think would have a good shot.
Yeah, no, I do definitely think that's the thing. Like, I don't think it's going to be Gavin Newsom. Sorry.
No sweat off my back. I mean, I have appreciated many things that Gavin Newsom has done and espoused. He's done a good job of trying to keep Democrats in a position or put them in a position of looking like they're fighting back.
Yeah.
But I also do not. I could see him not running to what has been conversed about the fact that he's still got a young family, similar to JD Vance.
That's one of the reasons why I don't think JD might be it.
Yeah.
Up until this recent step down by Tulsi, I thought she was going to be the nominee.
Yeah, indeed.
Your family comes first, right?
Yeah. Does RFK Jr. make a run at it, you think?
No, I think he had his chance, and he's just happy to be Health and Human Services Secretary, which he did not think he was going to get. Originally, they were talking about him being some sort of health czar, the way Holman is over at Homeland Security. And then Thune at one point said, yeah, I can get him across the line. And he did. So as much as sometimes I don't like John Thune, when it came to the cabinet, pretty much everyone except for what's his name, who I couldn't believe was nominated to be AG. I was just like, there's no way. They all hate him.
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, he was one of the first to speak out about Kristi Noem when things started going south for her.
Yeah.
And then speaking of that too, just DHS, it was brought up at the end of the call. I don't know if you were still on of the Morning Post show that, and I did see this article that DHS is now threatening that they're going to take customs approvals away from international airports and sanctuary.
Yeah, I've heard about that a few days ago from a few other sources.
Yeah, I mean that's as somebody who lives in California, I'm right by SFO. If I couldn't fly in internationally in and out of SFO, and I mean San Jose is also an international airport, that's a big deal, and that's something from a administration perspective. I mean, I obviously don't agree with it, but man, I'm still ruminating on that one.
Yeah, especially since all the things that are coming down California's way this year, the World Cup, the Olympics. Like, this is not a time that's a hefty thing to hold over your head.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I guess it's a point of leverage, but it's also, are you putting yourselves as a federal government in a bigger predicament? I mean, there's already folks that are scared of coming into the States for the World Cup just due to what's been happening ice generally. There have been people on vacation that have been picked up that have come from other countries, specifically Latin American countries, that have been tied into, being pulled in by ice and adding this onto it. I mean, I can't imagine what FIFA is thinking as far as the potential revenue losses they're going to see just from the conversations.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely have friends who will not go to the States right now because Trump is president. It's like, guys, you're white guys. You have to be afraid.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So we were having a discussion last week, and we had another point of agreement, and that was on labor unions. And I'm just curious: are you in a union, or is this just more because you're in the business? What are your thoughts on that? Because to me, the purest form of capitalism is the organization of labor. Like, it's like all these people come out hostile to it. I'm like, no, they have the right to organize. But maybe I don't like the way unions run sometimes. I don't necessarily like the seniority system. But if that's how they choose to organize themselves, who are we to complain?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked at a number of different companies. I've never been a part of a union, but at one point I worked for a company that is based out of the Netherlands, and even in their global decision making, they would have to go through the Dutch labor approval system, especially for major moves. And I think just from a business planning perspective, especially living here in the Bay Area and all of the layoffs that have been occurring over the past 24 months, I think in some sense it's come from the COVID era when they were all hiring at huge rates, and now they're trying to come to some equilibrium. But I am absolutely pro-union. I would say I'm also pro, maybe not necessarily, obviously not executive level unions, but from the managerial class. I think we live in an era and in a country where, we're still a service economy as much as we want to bring back manufacturing and that type of industrial type of industry. But the number of people that work in a managerial or, just single operator type of individual that works in a broader company, I think it's relevant in this day and age, and it's unfortunate to me that we've seen unions just really be decimated over the last 80 years.
Yep. No, I agree. Definitely having worked in, I was in logistics, not in construction, but I definitely get the fact that, HR was not our friend.
Yeah, yeah,
And having organized white collar is just as much as good for the white collar as organized blue collar, and negotiating and bargaining and well, we think your bonus should be this year because of your personal things. No, well, why is my bonus based on the fact or on like because we've organized and collectively bargained into a good contract?
yep. Well, and here in the States, I don't know how relevant it is in Canada, but non-compete clauses. I mean, here in the state of California, luckily I live here, they're not really relevant. They're not actionable in my state, but many states around, especially what is it, workers' rights, or I'm blanking on the term. In many Southwest Southern states, they do allow companies to actuate non-compete clauses, and that really hamstrings somebody who, whether or not you left your job voluntarily or you are leaving because of an action that the company took. I mean, that really hurts the individual worker, and I just don't see how that makes sense.
Yeah, here you have to compensate for that time. So if you, this happened to a friend of mine. He was in a lawyer recruiting firm, and he left and eventually started his own. They did give him, he did have non-compete, but they also had to give him 6 months severance.
Mm.
And so he couldn't compete with them for 6 months, but he was getting paid for that 6 months. So I'm a
Yeah.
little bit more okay with that. Here, generally, that's how it works, from my understanding, unless you're a politician, where you have a cooling off period before you can become a lobbyist.
Hmm.
And we don't pay for that.
Yeah. Since lobbying is the most important job in the world, right?
Well, you know how lobbying works in Canada? You go, there is a hall in Parliament or Queen's Park. And you go in there and you set up your craft table, you have your t-shirts and whatever product you're hawking, and that's how you lobby the politicians as they walk by.
That to me is the way to go.
Yeah.
Those backroom deals, no thank you. But
Yeah,
set up a table with some swag.
Yep.
That's the way to
That
go.
friend I was telling you about, he lives close to Queen's Park, so he always goes down for the swag nights
Right on.
to get his free stuff.
Well, cool.
Well, we've been talking about an hour right now, so I think, and we've covered a fair amount of stuff. So unless you have something you want to close out on, I think we can wrap up the show.
Yeah, I appreciate the time, and thank you for the invitation to come on
You're
your
welcome.
platform. Yeah, I thought it was a great conversation, and look forward to having more in the future.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'll definitely see about getting you on for one of the panel shows, and we can have a real
Awesome.
discussion. And yeah, it was great talking to you. And I'll see you for tonight for trivia.
Indeed.
And for those who've been watching or watching in the future, if you like this kind of stuff, like, share, and subscribe, and I can continue to deliver interesting conversations and the conspiracy stuff I get into at other times. Thanks for watching.